Yeah, productivity has been a key focus for our company and even in our past lives, but it's even more so now important in the whole remote and hybrid workspace because it changes the game. And people who are very used to a particular way of operating from an organizational standpoint, and even from a personal standpoint, the last 2 years or so has really kind of turned things on its head. So if we look at some of the process changes that are going to have to come into place, we need to think about that in a holistic fashion. We know what the benefits are from hybrid. People are enjoying the work from home. Some people are. People who have to now start to return to the office. There's a lot of challenges there. And we're outlining 5 of the top ones. There are many others, but if we think about starting off from a collaboration standpoint, so for remote work to be effective, you need a way to process that. People have gotten very used to collaborate via email, but engagement is much harder now. Employees have to be connected. They have to maintain a positive attitude and establish these strong relationships, participate in virtual events, and be active in online meetings and keep the enthusiasm high. And that is very challenging for this whole different way of interacting. So leadership from an organizational standpoint has to make sure that they're facilitating, they're encouraging, and providing that environment, that physical and organizational support system that encourages not only the remote and hybrid work, or as people start to come back into the office, how that all is going to work together. There's some very specific challenges, as some people are going to be in the office, some are not going to be in the office. Just a simple one is whiteboarding and brainstorming. That's a great venue for people to collaborate. And a lot of the larger organizations are focusing their return to work around that collaboration piece. But it still has challenges if not everybody is in there. So certain things need to be considered. The software that you're using, the cameras and microphone setups, the lighting placement, all those things need to be thought about and maybe tweaked and individual changes, not only from an office and a conference room standpoint, but also for the individuals who are calling in from home. Some people like to mandate a kind of cameras on approach. That may be something that an organization adopts, but it's not always the right thing for everybody, but it does help in some certain situations. Another area for collaboration is going to be around something that used to be pretty basic, like creating proposals or just documentation that people will be able to do together. And we just have to think through those on how different ways that groups are going to collaborate and talk together. A lot of the software systems out there, the Microsoft and the Google Office products, really have that collaboration, that remote collaboration built in now, and definitely focus on in the last couple of years. So that helps a little bit. Another area is going to be on the performance management side. It has been very difficult as performance management in general, but now to add in the remote and hybrid facet of it, what organizations are seeing is they need to be looking at how to focus on the work that's done instead of just the hours that are worked. And it becomes difficult for individuals as they have this more kind of flexible working environment to really track their hours and be in front of the computer when they need to be. So the effect there has got to be how to work with that performance management, the tools for remote employees, and how to ensure that people are given that flexibility, but yet you still have a way to manage and to monitor the work that's being done. Because in the end, really shouldn't matter how many hours people are working, but it's, are they effective and they getting the job done? So that those performance reviews are going to come into place, and how to make sure that your employees are being challenged and tracked, and how your goals are set, and how frequently you're meeting, and having more, say, incremental reviews rather than annual, is all some really interesting areas that people are looking into. Cybersecurity has always been a big focus for organizations, but it's even more so now, because securing a remote workforce is not just about securing the building or having your data center, having the right structure around that. Now your sphere, your footprint has extended to, could be around the world. So you got to be looking at the software as a services that you're using. You got to look at the cloud providers that are being brought into your space, and how people are interacting with those systems, whether it's over a virtual private network or it's through the internet. So cybersecurity has got a lot of challenges in the remote side of things. And then the use of office space. So a lot of people are downsizing, as Ryan said earlier. They're either reducing their footprint or getting rid of it altogether. But for those who still have offices that are coming in, how is that going to work? You know, do you still have the same desk assignments? Do you look at things from a squatting perspective? You go sit there and you got it for the day, or do you need to think about it, you know, things as first come, first serve? Do you need a system for reservations? And you want to think through these things, because the last thing you need is people squabbling over, hey, that's my desk, or I need this space, or we need a conference room. You want to make sure that those things are facilitated early. One of the key areas has been paperwork, and paperwork has been a focus for companies for a very long time. 10, 15 years ago, they called it the whole paperless office focus. And now it's even more important, because when people are not in the office and you have papers, it's very difficult to interact with those things. So that becomes a real focus point for process change, is trying to eliminate that paperwork, keeping things as digital as possible, and thinking about things like those interoffice memorandums or expense receipts and how those get compiled and sent in, or even birthday cards, right? You know, people like to send those around and make sure they're sharing and collaborating and coordinating, but you need to think through those things. So one of the, so we talked about, you know, all these different areas, engagement, performance management, cybersecurity, office use, paperwork. These are all challenges for the remote work.
So Mike, as companies head back into the office, which one of these would be top of mind to make sure they don't lose the new capabilities they picked up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a lot of ways to look at how to know where to start on this. There are other areas of focus too, but when I think about the easiest, say the areas that can make the most impact, regardless of whether you're doing remote work or not, paperwork for me is always going to be a key factor to decide, hey, how can I eliminate this? Because if you can eliminate the paperwork, or at least the processing of the paperwork, get things out of filing cabinets, or get rid of the whole scanning process, there's so much to be learned and so much to be saved from a process, from a cost standpoint, that that would be always the first place I would start. How do I get rid of it? So now that we have some ideas of areas that we want to focus, well, how do I manage it, right? There's all sorts of different ways for project management and product management, but really when it comes down to the specific way you do things, doesn't really matter as long as you take in consideration a few things. Number one is to understand that the process for implementing changes has to start with and end with the people, right? So just because you want to digitize something or you want to change the way something is processed from a flow standpoint, the people are the ones that are going to be using the process. They have to be considered from the beginning and from the end. And there's always going to be this preparation, the management, and a reinforcement not only of the process but of the people, because they're the ones that are going to provide the feedback and let you know whether it makes sense to adopt. So when we go and we think about the way to execute change, really just three things we want to focus on. I want to make sure I understand and clearly enunciate the vision. I want to make sure that I can take a piece of work and pilot it, experiment, get some feedback. And ultimately, if you're doing it really well and you're doing it in small increments, you can pivot very quickly where you haven't sunk a lot of resources or time if that hypothesis that you had for the work doesn't really flesh out. So you can always then pivot, go back, let's redo another pilot and come up with some new approaches. And lastly, you want to phase in those changes. As people are coming back to work, maybe they're not coming back to work 5 days a week. Maybe you want to mandate 3 days a week, but better yet, give them the opportunity to slowly phase that work in, because ultimately people have adjusted to a different work schedule. They have groceries, they've got their dry cleaning, or maybe not doing dry cleaning anymore, but really how their whole work-life balance has changed. Their schedules have changed, and you want to make sure that you're giving them the opportunity to slowly phase in and adjust to that return to work, return to office, and the change in the process that are coming. Piloting, going back to that, one of the key areas there from a pilot is that feedback. And we talked about how people provide that feedback, but the important thing is that we want to capture and learn, measure, and make continuous improvement over time. As you get better and better at piloting, you'll be able to make your executions process that much more stable, and people are going to be much more acceptable and accepting of change. So let's talk about some process automation opportunities. Now, process automation is going to be the focus of streamlining, removing human inputs, and decreasing errors, increasing the speed of delivery, boosting quality, minimizing costs. There's a whole bunch of positive aspects to process automation. So I've included a few of the areas here where many organizations will find that there's ideal places to focus on. So IT support, that could be looking at automating tickets, pulling data from different systems. From a data entry aspect, you want to eliminate as much manual data reentry or typing the same data into multiple systems. Data collection, making sure that you're getting all your data from different systems and learning from it, discovering the relationships between data. Then there's access to legacy systems, software testing, processing of invoices and expense reporting. All of these things are really good areas that are ripe for returning to the office, and even not returning to the office. These are areas that we also look at in just general process automation. And a lot of times we're going to bring in technologies to help with that, like RPA. You might have heard the terms, robotic process automation. Really just means, how do I automate tasks with some software that does that? There could be back-end integrations or chat bots and helping and streamlining some of those processes, building out data warehouses. And a lot of times you'll hear the term digital transformation or digital workplace. And that's really what process automation is all about. It's digitizing, it's transforming your organization to take advantage of technology.
So Mike, as companies start to look at going back in the office, how do they know which processes to look to automate? Are there some key indicators?
Right. Yeah, there definitely are. So when I think about how we help a company to evaluate and look at their systems, we're going to sit down with them and spend a half a day or at least a couple hours and talk about some key areas where they're feeling the pain points. So their areas of pain may be, for example, they have an IT desk that spends 50% of their time resetting passwords. Well, we know from experience that that is an easy place to start. So you look at your pain points, you look at some of the impacts to the organization. Really, ultimately, the way we like to approach things is from an ROI standpoint. So if I can take on some really highly important processes and turn them around and have immediate return on investment, and that return on investment could be through productivity, it could be from cost avoidance, or it could be from cost savings. So there's a lot of great areas to focus on there. The idea is that for your organization, for different organizations, it's going to depend on how you're operating and where the areas you could focus on.
Makes sense.